Hey guys, it's 3.3 and our learning objective for this lesson is students will be able to read chapters 4 and 5 of While the Locust Slept and analyze the two-timeline narrative structure. So let's take some notes here. First of all, what is narrative structure? Narrative structure is simply how the book is organized, how the story is told. Another way to think of it is the map or the outline of the story, what happens first, what happens next, and how everything works together. If you think about the works that we've read already, we read A Raisin in the Sun, which is a play that had one narrative timeline. It was a regular narrative structure where at the beginning of the play, they're waking up on a morning, and we find out the conflict shortly afterwards. And at the end of the play, they're moving out of their apartment. And so it all happens in one clear timeline that moves from the beginning to the end forward through time. We also read Simple Recipes by Madeline Thean. And I don't know if you remember, but in this story, we do hear a little bit about a second timeline, because Madeline Thean is an adult thinking about this memory she has of her parents. And she makes some comments about what she has right now in her apartment in order to cook and what kind of a cook she is now as an adult. So there was a little glimpse of a different timeline, but it wasn't a full story. It was just a quick moment where we heard about her life as an adult. The rest of the time was spent with her as a child, growing up with her brother and her parents, and learning how to cook. Okay, so in the book we're reading now, in While the Locust Slept, we have something very different. We actually have two timelines that are happening at the same time for us, but they're very different time periods, and you've probably noticed this already. So first of all, the definition of a two-timeline narrative structure is the organization of a story using two separate timelines, okay? And you've probably seen this before in books or movies. A good example is The Princess Bride. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it begins with the kid being sick and his grandpa telling him a story. And he thinks it's going to be a stupid story. And his grandpa's like, no, let me read it to you. And it ends up being The Princess Bride. And every once in a while, we go back to the view of the kid with his grandpa, and it kind of interrupts the story. So that's a similar kind of framework where we have two separate timelines. In this case, it's two totally separate stories, because we have the kid and his grandpa, and then the other story is like this fairy tale land where there are princesses and shrieking eels and all of those sorts of things. Here's the other timeline where we have the pirate and the dude getting revenge, right? On Tony. What is his name? My name is, I can't think of it right now. I should know it. He repeats it several times. He's trying to avenge his father's death. So they're two totally separate stories that are happening at the same time. We have something similar in While the Locust Slept, but in While the Locust Slept, the characters are the same. Okay. So in this paragraph, we see, but Geordie only knew half the story, though I told him some about my life with the Shawls, as I never talked about the state school. I never told him about the children who died there, nor my constant fear that I might join them. News of Emmett's death brought it all rushing back. Silver-haired and immaculately attired in a white uniform, Miss Monson lived for her work at C-15. She was absent only once in 5 years that I remember, but her diligence wasn't for love of the boys. Miss Monson's passion was punishment. Okay, so here's an example of the two-timeline narrative structure. In this paragraph, Peter Razor is talking about what's going on when he's 15 years old after he has left the state school at Owatonna, talking about Geordie and the Shawlses. And he remembers something that happened from the past. Emmett died in this present timeline, right? So this is the memory. There's not really much transition. There's just news of Emmett's death brought it all rushing back. And then we jump right into what he remembers. This is the past timeline when he is a little kid at the state school at Owatonna, and Miss Monson is, making his life terrible. All right. So this is going to happen throughout the book, where we're going to hear one timeline about what's going on now with the Shawlses, and another timeline where we hear about what's going on in the past when he lived at the state school at Owatonna. All right. Oops. So the past timeline is Peter's memories from the state school ages 1 to 15. And then the current timeline is Peter's life after leaving the school on the farm and living with the Shawls. The Shawlses. All right, what are some effects of a two-timeline narrative structure? Like, why would a writer do this? Well, in each example, Simple Recipes, The Princess Bride, and While the Locust Slept, we can see some of the effects that the past has on the present characters. And so it creates connections between events. We can see, maybe why Peter is thinking, acting, feeling a certain way based on something that happened to him in the past. And that's really showing the character's reaction, right? Why might he be happy or sad at this moment? Well, it brings up these past events. It also builds curiosity and tension for the reader, because we're wanting to know what has led Peter to be the person that he is at age 15. And how did he survive all of these traumatic experiences? It also helps us follow the narrator's train of thought so we can understand what he is thinking and why. So those are some good effects. I think that's the last one, of a two-timeline narrative structure. And I hope that you're able to use some of the help in the packet when you get confused about what's happening when. I created timelines in the packet, and those are like should-dos and aspire-to-dos to fill some of the blanks in, but it will help you be able to at least distinguish what the two timeline narratives are. All right, enjoy this next reading. Thanks.